Travis Wingoodsell collapsed for 3 hours. In my dream, I was in like a hostel of some kind, because there were just rooms in this big building, and we were all living in there. And I had my furniture, and I was trying to make some room so I could set up an office, and nobody was willing to cooperate, and so I tried looking for my dolly to move stuff around. Couldn't find that. And then one guy who was my old supervisor at the LDS Church's distribution warehouse on 17th and 17th, and he tried to help, took me into the back room storage areas to see if we could find anything, and couldn't find anything. And he found a Mia magazine. It was a black cover with a black and white photo set in smaller frame than the size of the magazine, of a woman in a black and white outfit, and gave that to me, and then I came back and all my stuff was gone. I had no idea what a Mia magazine was, so I went checking on the internet and found out, yeah, it is a woman's fashion magazine. I saw mostly Latinas modeling on the covers that I saw. So yeah, I showed a Mia skirt, model in a Mia skirt for you, as well as a legally and lawfully wedded husband and wife, of which this Instagram photo from the wife's account caused a backlash from the Christian community. Who would have thought that Christians would be unhappy with a husband and wife, legally and lawfully wedded? Yet nonetheless, they were offended. Back off, guys. Seriously, my hell, they're a man and one woman, legally and lawfully wedded, and Christians attack them. So, yeah, I got that photo for you too, and that leads us into my video. The church and sexuality. Now, I know those of you who are trying to prove the church is a cult and using that bite method to make your comparisons. It's partially correct, but it's wrong. Because the church does not fit into the bite model, but yet ex-Mormons keep forcing the square cube to fit in the round hole. It doesn't work. There's my cover photo. Hang on while I search for it. Hopefully I can find little babies doing it. Florida retiree wrestles puppy from jaws of alligator. If you know there are wandering alligators. Square peg in round hole. Images. Okay. So I'm not seeing anything with humans. Well, if at first it doesn't fit, force it. Oh, here's a comic strip. Welcome to heaven, enter here. Well, crap. Here's a sad face. Square peg. I don't fit. I don't belong. Oh, here's a woman. Can we blow it up? Getty. That doesn't look promising. Getty puts their little watermark on them. Alright. Let's see what this one is. There we go. That's decent. We can trim it to fit on YouTube. Alrighty. Gotta have a woman in the picture. You don't want women left behind. Which could also be a video topic in and of itself too. You can't force people into the workplace because it will replace people already there. And so you're just replacing one problem for another. Alrighty. So, church and sexuality. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has, on multiple occasions in their past, attempted to try to force the sexuality of Mormons. It began with Brigham Young trying to force Mormons to be polygamist, telling Mormons in his what would become section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants that in order to be exalted in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, you have to have 10 haughty virgins. Well, men don't have 10 hands to put over their wives' breasts. We wouldn't be legally and lawfully wedded either. And so that was the first thing. And yet at the same time Brigham was forcing polygamy, it resulted in a number of men not getting wives. One such man was Evan Stevens. He's my third great uncle. He's my third great uncle because he didn't marry and have children. So it was his sister who come on, Google, what the hell? Okay, there we go. Latter-day Saint composer and hymn writer. He was the first director of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir before Nelson shut it down, had to rename it. And so from 1890 to 1916, he was the Mormon Tabernacle Choir guy. He was born 1854, and so he wasn't one of the pioneers. He moved with his family. Hencater is where he was born. Wales. Okay. Yeah, so he was one of the first waves of Wales, which is interesting because of the... That's another topic for you. I did a paper on that in school. Yeah, it's natural... forgetting the title of the book. Natural Religion, Origins of Natural Religion. It's by Hume. Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. There we go. I recognized Mormon doctrine from the lectures on faith compared to Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. And Hume was a Wales who ended up going to England, where he published the book, but because he's from Wales, those in Wales elevated him to God status, and so everybody in Wales knew of Hume's work, and so Evan Stevens also would have been converted to the Mormon Church based on the matching philosophical principles, among others from Wales. And then this was let's see, moved when he was 12. Okay, so 12 would be 66. And so this was right in the height of Mormonism, as Brigham Young is in full polygamy mode. And he never got married. His mother would take with him to work to help pay to build the Salt Lake Temple. So yeah, they helped raise the money to build the temple of the Illuminati. Stevens performed in his local congregation. Brigham Young came to visit. Stevens was embarrassed by his poverty, because again, being poor in the church is a sin, particularly of his lack of coat, shoes, painted his feet black with shoe polish. At the Bowery, before Young entered the building, Stevens became aware with embarrassment and started to exit the building and ran into Young entering the building. Young encouraged him to sing, and he returned to the Bowery and sang. "Get in there and sing for me, boy!" Yeah, the part they don't tell you. Stevens never married. He had an attachment to a girl in Willard when he was in his early 20s. Utah Territory. But she died in a freak accident while in a stage performance. Oh. I thought it had to do with another guy that stole her from him. That's what the guy who does the tours at the gravesite says. So this is new. Ray Bergman is the one who said this, author of a book. Later, Stevens was engaged to a woman who made a deathbed request at the end of her brief illness that he love her through his music. I'm not going to marry you, but love me through your music. I don't love you, so love me through your music. Mormon women. After his death, Stevens was sealed by proxy to his great niece. Okay, there's some real screwed up stuff here. It's cousin. Where's the cousin? The cousin was his house cleaner, because she never got married. Who's this niece? Somebody's screwing up my ancestors' history. Dear God. Wikipedia. And of course, there's nothing here for anybody's making of the claim. We do have something here at the end about an ordinance. Let's see, after Stevens died, Daniels, so yeah, did join the LDS Church. Alright, so they're claiming instead of cousin, it's now great niece. Stevens had intended on marrying her. Oh, did he? Is that what Sarah said? He wanted to marry me! Yay, I know he did! I felt it in my heart! We were kindred spirits in the premortal existence. Arranged for her to come to Utah from the United Kingdom in 1902. Stevens had anticipated that she would convert to the LDS Church on coming to Utah, but when this did not happen, he arranged for her to be his housekeeper. According to interviews of Stevens' relatives conducted in the 1950s and the 1970s. Oh yeah? Is this where he got your information from? Because my mom tells it different. Stevens stated that Daniels would have made a good wife. But he would only marry a member of the LDS Church. No, this is nuh-uh. Whoever you interviewed claiming to be his relatives, it was not my mom. After Stevens died, let's see, George L. Milton, Rhett S. James, a response to D. Michael Quinn's homosexual distortion of Latter-day Saint history. Huh. Yeah, people were claiming that the church really wanted to fire D. Michael Quinn because he's a homosexual. See, the church is all over sexuality. But that's what the gravestone tour guide was saying, is that he may have been homosexual, to explain it. But everybody's leaving out the important information of Brigham had already married all the women. And those who nobody wanted among Brigham and his Danite apostles were sent to the brothels in Utah. Orrin Porter Rockwell had the first one at the point of the mountain, and then Brigham, not being satisfied with all the divorces he was getting, built his own on Commerce Avenue, which is Regent Street, downtown Salt Lake, by his Ponderosa with the inverted pentagram. So, yeah, the great niece. See how they're trying to separate, because it was cousin. That's why he didn't marry her. Cousin. See, great niece is perfectly fine and acceptable. I guess you can marry your great niece as creepy as that is. But cousin is not appropriate, and so he didn't marry her. And the other woman, I'm now calling into question that too, because it was a situation where another guy loved her, and so he lost out, and so he decided from that moment on, no woman was therefore good enough if he can't have the woman he loved. This is why you don't listen to hearsay, because everybody's got it all different. But dear God. Alrighty. But yeah, they were sealed, and the sealing is the confirmation situation. But they don't use the actual ordinance. That's kept secret and private. Only those who have the family relation knows the actual truth. Cousin. So, yeah. Also during Brigham Young's time was the temple, first at the Endowment House, where he had created a drama play for the endowment ceremony. And the church forces all Mormons to sit through that hour-long ceremony. And depending on if it's the live version or the video versions, it's typically around 40 minutes, depending on how big the congregation is, to go through the veil, and where you're sitting in relation to who goes through the veil first. It's usually the first rows and they go back. But so on a Friday night, it used to be that you'd be there for over an hour because of the high volume of traffic, squeezing in people into the episode or into the sessions. But Brigham Young had set up the garden scene, which were all live performances, to have Eve's, remember, polygamous. Adam was a polygamist, so he has to be shown with multiple wives, and they're running around in loincloths. And the reason why loincloths is because Brigham is quoted as having said that people would, throw a hissy fit if they were actually nude to be in character. So yes, if Mormons weren't so prudish, Eve's would have been frolicking in the garden scene in the temple naked. But if you remember, back in those days, women were forced to dress from the neck as high up as possible to the wrists as far up as possible to the ankles as far down as possible. That was modesty. And if you showed any flesh, batted any eye, you were a whore. Literally. I mean, dear God. And so to have the temple text or temple session with women in loincloths was in and of itself a scandal for Mormons, as I'm sure the women were kind of shocked and being forced to trust that their captor, Brigham Young, who kidnapped them and fled the country, was truly a man of God. And that this was okay as long as it was in the temple. I'm sure the men were secretly in their heads going, "This is the most awesome church in the universe, man." But at home with their wives, oh my dear, that was just horrifying. Oh, I'm so glad the church is true, because otherwise I couldn't stand looking at naked women all day. Because a woman's body is evil. And so, yeah. And then you have the evangelical merge with 1923, the church having to reincorporate themselves into a religious organization, this time as a criminal religious organization, as the United States employed the Edmunds-Tucker Act to destroy the polygamous church. And so thus the need to reincorporate. And they finally did so in 1923, where Lorenzo Snow's protection racket with tithing finally started to pay off sufficiently that they could afford to get the fee paid, become a corporation. The nightmares that we've been denied learning growing up Mormon. And so by joining with evangelicals, though keeping singularly distinct, maintaining the Book of Mormon and the first vision as they understood it, as being a literal, real history, they carried forth. And then you get to the free sex 60s, as hippies, the hippie movement, and the free sex era, sex, drugs, and rock and roll swept across America and Western culture. And the church, of course, was opposed. The civil rights movements were involved to demand black and women's rights. And the church said no. It's all evil, and don't you dare marry one of them who aren't our color, because we'll excommunicate you. They were harder on women than they were on men. Yeah, there was a strict ban on interracial marriage, and as birth control became more developed, that's why the free sex 60s, sexual revolution emerged, is because women could feel more secure that they weren't going to get pregnant. More secure. Just the tip, baby. I promise I'll pull out. And I can't feel anything with the Trojan on. I wanna feel you, baby. You know I love you. Don't baby me. I don't see no ring. And dear God. So yeah, the church was trying to enforce sexual purity during all that time, trying to keep Mormons to marry each other whom they're related to. And so a lot of second cousins were getting married in the church. Parents being one of those second cousins, through the Hoops family mostly. They had similar genealogies through the Hoops line, of which the Kimballs come from. So yes, I am a descendant of Heber C. Kimball and one of his wives, of all people. And if you've heard my videos exposing Heber C. Kimball, you would understand why. So both parents have Heber C. Kimball in them. So it even makes it even more significant for me to be a LDS critic, having come through in part through Heber C. Kimball. And anyway, and so the church was being more explicit in what members could and could not do. And so in the solemn assembly for President Benson, in his to the youth of the noble birthright, when I just turned a priest at 16 years of age, he talks about necking and petting. And by not having sexual education myself, sex ed myself, neither from school, thank you Governor Brown, nor my dad, thanks Dad, I had no idea what necking and petting was. The closest I could figure for necking is that I saw several of my young peers trying to cover up a hickey. I had no idea how a hickey was made. I had no idea that it's from sucking on the skin. But nonetheless, I noticed a number of girls failing to cover up hickeys as they came to school. And so I assumed that must be what necking is, unless it's a vampire thing. And because we had Lost Boys come out, wasn't that 96 as well? We'll pause to check out Lost Boys, because that was a big cultural impact that everybody understood and knew about Lost Boys. And again, I didn't grow up in Utah, so 1987. Okay, so that was the year after Benson. What was it, summer? August. So right before school started, that was Japan. So when did it really get released here in America? Don't you cry, little sister. July 31st. Well, dude, why are you putting Japan, which was after this? This is America, where Wikipedia is in English. It's not Japan. It's not in Japanese. Why are you putting Japan's release date? Yeah. Alright. And then petting, I mean, what the hell? I pet animals, and I try to avoid it because I found out I'm allergic to pet dander. And it got so bad with cats because you don't give baths to cats, and so their dander is more potent to me. And so yeah, I can sit in a room where a cat has been and is not at that moment, and I will still all of a sudden start having breathing problems and start being unable to breathe, having a breathing attack. And Yeah, I ruined Thanksgiving up in Canada with the new fam. With the new fam of the new fam. As the father-in-law completely forgot that he had to clean the whole house, including the vents, of all pet dander that had killed off grandmother-in-law, of whom I gave her the final blessing before she died, moments after. And apparently he had forgot when he remarried to a woman who insisted on having cats. So yeah, here I am, having to run out to the front yard to breathe, yeah, I was just sitting there in the living room, and all of a sudden, is there a cat in here? And all of a sudden, this cute little fur ball, white fur ball, comes around the stairs, and I went, oh crap! I don't have much long to live, and immediately ran out. But you know, so how did this have to do with sex? We won't go into the Access Hollywood tape comparison. And so, yeah, I had no clue as to what Benson was talking about. And, of course, I was too shy around women. As I'm here in puberty and not having sex ed and completely freaked out, as there were times where I'd have to sit in my chair in class after class is over until things calmed down, and purposely wore my shirt untucked, which was contrary to the culture back then, because if you remember watching all the Hollywood movies and TV shows, all the guys wore t-shirts and Levi's tucking in their shirts. My mom insisted that I tuck in my shirt, which I didn't know and understand that it had to do with the temple and the magic underwear. But I couldn't, in all good conscience, go tucked in. And women, if you don't know what I mean, I'm sure you do. And so, yeah, it was a nightmare. Growing up as a teenager, but when I finally went through the temple, despite getting a wedgie by the old man giving me my magic underwear and forcing me to tuck it in, and I'm getting a little uncomfortable as he's tucking in the top into the bottom. What are you doing? And you can't really get upset in the temple because it's the temple, which makes it even worse. You're just supposed to take it. But yeah, the church had rules for couples who were legally and lawfully wedded. No BJs, no HJs, and if you don't know those definitions, oh, aren't you sweet? You don't know. Good for you. And eventually the church was forced to back off and say what they now say in the law of chastity: no sexual relations except for your husband and wife to whom you are legally and lawfully wedded. And so for Christians to be infuriated by a legally and lawfully wedded couple, you know, no PDA. And at Rick's and BYU and all of the church campuses and sites and stuff, yeah, there's a no PDA policy. because that's a sin. No public displays of affection. And so, yeah, you can't hug somebody, can't hold hands. No wonder Mormons have to do things in secret. But this is the horror and the nightmare of religion stepping in to control people's natural sex drives, to punish women for being victims of rape, for punishing men with peer pressure to get married young because they become a menace to society, and a loser and a sucker if they can't get married, and if they can't keep their wife because of the economy, or because the woman doesn't want to take care of a man's needs, as the woman wasn't given sex education. And so she then goes into the marriage and goes, holy crap, he wants it more than once a month like I do? So, yeah, that's the nightmare of sex ed in the church. So I guess I get to put some kind of porn in the title, so I'm destined to get thousands of views for this one, I guess.